Hello everybody and welcome back to another exciting episode of Discover North Korea with me, Zoe from Zoe Discovers. This is the podcast that shows you a different side of North Korea than you would usually get from the media and tries to kind of expand that narrative, and that's exactly what we're going to be doing today. Everyone says how much of a mystery North Korea is and how much you hardly ever get in there. Well, if you're listening to this, you probably know that you can go to North Korea as a tourist, but you may not have known. I mean, a lot of people get really interested to see that I take videos and do photos there and stuff like that. Well, I take very small videos and vlogs and put them up on YouTube, but there are actually some documentaries, full-on films and documentaries that have been made in North Korea in the past. And today, we're going to be speaking about one of those in particular. And we have a very special guest on the show. He done a bunch of documentaries in North Korea, including Comrade Kim Goes Flying, Crossing the Line. I'm going to introduce you to those later on because they're absolutely incredible pieces of work and really, really interesting documentaries. But today, like I said, we're going to talk about one in particular that is Aim High in Creation, a really fascinating documentary. It offers such a unique perspective on the power of art and cinema to inspire change and ignite social movements. It's directed by a woman called Anna, and this film takes us really deeply into the world of North Korea, a country, like I mentioned, so often shrouded in mystery. What sets this documentary apart is its kind of unconventional approach to storytelling. So Anna, what she does, she's this Australian woman. She is inspired by the North Korean regime's propagandist films, and she decides to make her own propaganda film, basically because she's trying to inspire social movement in the town where she lives, because there is a mine being built that, you know, is bad for the environment and she doesn't want it to be built there. So she's trying to inspire social movement and social change. So she goes to North Korea to basically learn these techniques of propaganda and you know, in hope to stop things happening in her hometown. The documentary is interesting in itself because it's kind of a film within a film. The main part of the film, the documentary, it's from memory, it's about an hour and a half, and the main part of it is you seeing Anna learning these propaganda techniques. So the main part of Aim High in Creation is filmed in North Korea, and it's about her learning and her journey to understanding the North Korea propaganda machine. Very, very interesting. And then the last 10-15 minutes of the film are then Anna's film that she made using techniques learned in North Korea. So I found it super interesting. It's a really, really good documentary, and it's now available for you to download and to stream online, and that's exactly why I chose this as a topic today. And for you guys, very super lucky because, like I said, today our guest is going to be Nick Bonner. He has done lots of cool art, engagement projects, film projects in North Korea, and we'll kind of speak about that. Without further ado, let's stop me chatting and we're going to welcome Nick to the podcast. Nick, welcome to the podcast once again. This is actually your second time on the podcast. If you can remember back, you were on episode 2. But today we're going to be talking about something much more interesting and definitely picking your brains a little bit for your expertise on this topic, which is we're going to talk about Aim High in Creation. So, I mean, do you want to just kind of introduce it in your own words and talk a little bit about your involvement and stuff like that first, and then I'll pick your brains, ask you some questions.
Yeah, we just shot. We'd made this sort of trilogy of documentaries with the BBC with Dan Gordon, and that's another story altogether. And we'd made them with a North Korean producer called Ron Mi-hwa. And very, very sort of, for us, wonderful films because observational, at least I think they're as observational as you can be, and incredible access. I mean, the access that the state give you is one thing, but then working with this producer, this North Korean producer, for example, we got access to not just the family, but the family home, and that was purely down to her effort. So, and the same thing, meeting the American defectors. We didn't get just access to the American defectors. We got access to the kids, and the story just developed. She understands exactly what we're after, and pushes on our behalf, which you can imagine is very difficult in a country where you're very limited in really the access you get or you're given officially. So she was working for us, and we decided after making so many documentaries that actually we wanted to make a feature film, and started the idea of Comrade Kim Goes Flying, the story of a girl who is a coal miner and dreams of becoming a trapeze artist, a feature film. Started off as a short story, but we'd started writing the script, and by sort of 2012, we'd shot the film and we were in post-production. And then a director called Anna Borinsky, who's known for sort of quite a couple of other documentaries. I mean, do look her up. A fascinating documentary on a true or fake story set in Iran. Anyhow, that's the classic story of hers. She wanted to shoot a film in North Korea, looking at how they make propaganda films, which also sort of interested me, but with the idea of making a film within a film. And the story of her sort of vehicle was gas fracking was happening in Australia. She wanted to make a film about gas fracking and how dangerous it was, and why not sort of slightly tongue-in-cheek go to North Korea and film. I wasn't quite too sure perhaps of her the volition really. Was it really there to as you can imagine, many people want to get access to North Korea, and not necessarily for the right reasons, or certainly for reasons that will make them famous, but maybe put us and our Korean colleagues into problems. So we're fairly careful who we work with. But Anna actually had a genuine interest in propaganda films. She'd read the manifesto by Kim Jong-il, The Art of Cinema, so she knew all about it. She'd watched a few films, and so there was a sort of level of trust there. And she'd tried to go through various people. North Koreans weren't speaking to her. There was a couple of companies she'd spoken to who were charging phenomenal amounts of money, and eventually we sort of, having said no a couple of times, I spoke to her. At that time, it was going to buy phone, and we agreed to help her. So I will continue. There's a little bit more about that. So the only way to help really was for me to go into North Korea to meet my colleagues, to explain that they want to make a story, propaganda, make a film, understand propaganda, which would mean meeting their world famous directors, the North Korean directors, and then them coming in and asking questions to these directors. How do you shoot a propaganda film? And then Anna would go back and then make her film within a film, her feature film within the documentary film. And so Ryom said yes, and we headed off, and met this incredible bunch of, and there's some gorgeous little bites. My favorite bit was where Anna introduced herself. We arrived in Pyongyang, and Anna sort of met all the actors that was in the film studio just outside Pyongyang. And I remember they were all around there, and actors, all the top people. I mean, really the top. Wow. And there's a lovely guy, Mr. Pak, who is they're all being very quiet and austere listening to her. And she said, well, I'm doing a film, explain, I want to make a film, I want to learn from you. And I want to do something about, climate change, which is, this gas fracking. Do you understand what climate change is? And silence. And Pak turned around and said, does she think we're from the moon? It was just gorgeous. Suddenly everyone laughed and everyone relaxed. And and it was lovely. So it was this sort of idea. Then sort of she'd by accident, sort of broken the atmosphere into this sort of wonderful sort of lightness. And then what comes out of this film, and she's very good at picking this up, is the characters. And that's why this film to me works, because it's not done in a patronizing way with the people that she interviews, and it's wonderful. It's a total eye opener. Very, very refreshing.
Amazing. I actually have so many questions about it. Perhaps we can go back to the very start of what you said, and you said that that you meet with one of your director, the North Korean director, or the person who helps you kind of facilitate all of these. So is this the same?
Yeah, producer. Yeah.
Right. So she or he, I don't know, would help you with she helped you with all of the projects that you've done in North Korea? And how did you come
Yeah,
about meeting her for the first time and stuff like that?
yeah. The first time we Dan Gordon approached me back in 1999 about the story of the North Korean football team of 1966 who created the greatest shock in World Cup history by beating the Italians. And
Yay.
it's an amazing match. In fact, it was an amazing story,
Yeah,
and
nice.
incredible characters. The game of their lives. That's it.
Yeah. Oh,
And
yeah.
what had happened? How we got that contact was I'd been the guy who we'd been doing all our tours with, choreo tours, sort of trips with, was a very keen football player. And he knew Pak Duik. So, for us, the stories were that these football players were arrested on their return after 66 for having been drunk and sort of thrown the last game, if you like, against Portugal. No one knew anything about them. The only person they knew that was still alive was Pak Duik, because supposedly he hadn't gone carousing in Liverpool and drinking.
Okay.
And so he was the only one who had not
Liverpoolian.
been drinking. So he was the only one available. And
Right.
in fact, but this chap knew him just sort of socially, and said, look, are you up for a film? And he then introduced us to Romy Hua, who is working for this state industry, the film industry called Core Film, and she said, okay, we'll make the film with these people. At that time, no documentary had been made. So there'd been one Polish film made, but there'd been no documentary made where you actually interview North Koreans, proper full-on doc. So this was new territory for them, and I went over and met her, and there's a massive amount of distrust because everyone going into North Korea, they're not daft. They know full well that people come in from the West with one story and then want to develop another one, and of course this story. The game of their lives was linked to the idea they'd all been sent to Yodok prison camp. So there's a lot of stories after they throw this match against, have thrown this match against the Portuguese, that they'd returned in disgrace and were in prison. So we had very sensitive issues to discuss, and we did, and we dealt with it in a very dry way and asked them directly. And she was happy with the film. In fact, the Koreans loved the film. I mean, in the end, they love the
Oh,
film so
amazing.
much that they show it almost every year. Come the time in July when the matches were taking place, they show them on television. And what was lovely about making that film was that suddenly these players who had actually been forgotten. I mean, they were in '66 they were recognised, but of course time goes by. And North Korea not being up on social media as perhaps other countries, that sort of disappeared into the obscurity of time. And there's a glorious story where Pak Duik was driving in his Mercedes, and he was given that for his sports achievements. And a policeman stopped him and for some sort of discrepancy or something, and said, I know you. You're in that film. You're Pak Duik." And so I mean, they all knew Pak Duik, but they'd lost what he looked like visually. And so these glorious stories, they suddenly became massive heroes again because their faces were sort of thrown back on their screen as older men, and so. Yeah, no, they were dragged out for every sort of activity you could possibly have after that. Wonderful lads, really lovely lads. So Rom and I then, developed this. Rom Dan Gordon, the director of the film, me as associate producer. The three of us got on really well. Promised we'd never make another film because it was too exhausting. And 2 years later, we were shooting the film on the Mass Games. So yeah, it's all about it's about contacts and having her just do an incredible job to understand us and trust in us. I mean, it's a big ask, because the footage we were shooting, you could have written a totally different story behind that.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's one of the things that I say to people a lot is that when people are really shocked that I can make like videos and photos in North Korea, even though it's nothing compared to you doing documentaries, but people are shocked that I alone can make videos. And a lot of people ask me like, how can you make those videos? And I'm like, the videos that I make in North Korea, anyone can make in North Korea, with the only exception of like perhaps when I'm talking to North Korean people and interviewing them directly on the camera. technically everyone can make those videos, but like the North Koreans would probably not want to, because a lot of what the vloggers have done in the past is like interview guides and stuff and then twist their words and then make the guys look rubbish on YouTube, and the guides are very aware that this happens. So
Yeah,
um,
no, I agree. I mean, it's true. I mean, the thing is that you take an observational stance, or at least I think you do. But if you're going to come in with a view, that this is the axis of evil, etc. Well, fine. I mean, that's your point of view. The problem is, by shooting there, you're going to be putting yourself in difficulty, but you'll certainly be putting whoever takes you in and out. So if you've got an axe to grind, going into North Korea and making yourself famous and shooting a sort of, here I am, in the most closed country in the world, yeah, it'll get you the hits, but it leaves a lot of mess behind.
yeah.
I think there are sort of more subtle ways to do it. And also, if you think you're an expert after 1 week in North Korea,
Yes.
then it's a bit sad, I think, and most people do. So yeah, we spent now 30 years in North Korea, and in fact, by the time we were shooting films, we'd already spent 15 years there and understood. So I think you do a very good job. Some people would perhaps say, you're just showing one side of it, but that is the only side you will get to see. So as long as people understand that, but it is real life. It is Pyongyang life. People say to us sometimes on tour, "Oh, I'd like to see the real life." And you think, well, this is Pyongyang. This is, oh, no, but this is the privilege. It is the privilege. It's 2.5 million, relatively privileged to go to Pyongyang. But we do go to the countryside, and you do see what the countryside looks like. You don't get to see the areas like the camps and everything else like that. That just is not going to happen. I mean, human rights in North Korea, not exactly excellent by any means. So, but the limitations are what you see on a tour is a pretty good introduction to a country. When we were shooting with Matt Jazz, the 3D photographer, when we were shooting, and they said, we're going to a model farm now. And on it, we sort of said, well, this is a model farm, this is a propaganda farm. But if the best they've got is, a cow, with a cart and what have you, that is, it's not exactly, propaganda. It's tough there. It's a very, very tough life, and it's a tough country.
Definitely. So, in terms of filming in a tough country, maybe you can talk us through a little bit about what's it like trying to facilitate these things, and we'll get back onto exactly aim high and creation and stuff. But I'm just wondering, in general, like, what kind of difficulties do you encounter trying to film these documentaries in North Korea, and how do you go about facilitating that in a country that is so closed and that does try and not show certain sides and stuff?
Yeah, I think you choose your story and you realize. So for example, the 3 documentaries we did, the Game of Their Lives, like I said, was we wanted to ask about the imprisonment of the players on their return. A State of Mind, we sort of questioned about the arduous march, this period of starvation in North Korea. And for Crossing the Line, the story on the American defectors, it was about the Japanese abductions, etc. So we certainly don't shy away from very sensitive topics, but they related to the topic we're particularly filming. We don't go in. I know there have been people going to make one story and then use that just as back footage to tell another story, for example, about nuclearization, etc., etc. So so first of all, you stick to a line that obviously goes to the mass games. He wanted to follow 2 girls during their training to the final performance, and on that way, you're picking up the stories that are relative to that main theme, and that's with all of our stories. And with Aim High in Creation, we wanted to see how did the directors work with their actresses. So Anna was filming that was the storyline. There's nothing else brought in, and always coming back to the sort of the story of cinema, the art of cinema by Kim Jong-il. So you've always got a strong direction, and your Korean party understand that you have to ask these sensitive questions. They don't like it, but they understand that there are going to be areas, but they start getting into the grey area, but not too far. So that's the first thing I think is really knowing where you're taking the sort of film. Things certainly come along as you're making documentaries. Things certainly drop in. For example, when we started shooting the American story of the American defectors in Crossing the Line, we didn't know that they had kids.
Right.
So that's suddenly
Incredible.
suddenly you said, would you like to see their children? You think, what? So that opens up a whole new avenue, but it's all relative. So that works. The second one is getting, the permissions, just getting the camera equipment in and the
Mm.
crew in safely. And uh, with Anna's film, we basically, the sound man wasn't such a sound man, and was an alcoholic and had some mental problems, and didn't turn up.
I wanted to
So
ask you about this.
on the
Yeah.
day we were heading off, so we basically had to train the North Korean to become a sound man. So he was actually working, if you like, with Anna, so working with the enemy.
That's quite fun.
So that was quite extraordinary. And you
Yeah.
can imagine, yeah, we were sort of trying to get them visas. I mean, the day before they flew, it was the day of the flight. He just
Wow.
hadn't turned up.
Just
So
disappeared.
that was interesting. Um, so things like that happen. Trying to get your camera equipment, actually in through China, the logistics of that, then into North Korea. That's quite a task, as you can imagine.
Mm.
And then it's sort of you're filming, and then one of the big sort of situations there is to try and limit the amount of Koreans you're followed by, because otherwise you end up being with a pretty significant crew. One of the documentaries we shot recently was Michael Palin in North Korea, and it was with the travel company, and they attached more North Koreans than the actual film crew. So we eventually just had to say, look, this isn't how you shoot a documentary,
Right.
because that's perhaps another sort of interesting thing. There's a Russian film made. I'm just trying to remember its name. I'll come up. We'll put it up underneath here, and they sort of did a documentary, and actually the documentary became how the North Koreans were directing this documentary. But that actually is how North Koreans make documentaries. Everything is sort of, you will say this. It's almost like a feature film. For a
Mm.
North Korean, a documentary is everyone who has rehearsed their lines and knows what's going to happen. Look
Right.
more joyful as this surprise gift arrives.
Yes.
Oh, no, do it again. Oh, so we've got very different ideas of what a documentary is for a start. But it's what we tend to do is make sure that we really surround ourselves by the minimum of people. So when we were shooting with Crossing the Line, even I would stand at the door, Dan and I with the director, and it would just be the cameraman just going around in the people's homes, filming them, camera and sound, picking up what they're saying, and then you come back in for an interview, just to sort of let them relax. And I think we did 130 hours filming for A State of Mind. I mean, so much so that the girl at the end, they're very, very tired. They've been practicing. They've been to school in the mornings, mass games in the afternoons, and they got in. Eventually the camera would sort of follow them into their bed, and they go
Oh,
enough.
awesome.
Put the so yeah, the access really has been incredible. It's got more and more difficult as people have abused, if you call it abused, or have pushed, should I say, and made documentaries with alternative sort of edits.
Yeah.
So they go in to film one thing and come out filming another, and that causes a great deal of problems. I mean, a classic one would have been what's it called? There's a film with two Korean lads who go in, and they're filmed by Red Chapel. That caused a lot of problems and put people in difficulties.
Yeah.
Because the film it was just, it was basically a piss take. I mean, it's interesting film, but it causes problems in North Korea, which we don't like.
Yeah. And then there was another one. I don't know if we're talking about the same one. I remember there's one.
Red Chapel. It was Red Chapel. So it was, Red Chapel. That was
Oh,
that
I
was
don't
the
think I've
one.
seen that one. The one that I
Yeah.
was thinking of is one where they went in to film something and then they found that they were being obstructed too much by filming. So they ended up filming everything that they weren't
That's the
allowed.
Russian one. Yeah, that's the
That
Russian
is
film. Yeah.
right. Yeah.
And I mean, that was, I think it's Ukrainian. I mean, it was, it's an interesting film, but yeah. Can we look up the name so we don't feel I feel terribly ignorant. He's a lovely man. I mean, but to him, he knew that was fascinating, and it is fascinating. But the problem is, in the end, that for the North Koreans, it's not something that passes their census. I mean, we have problems when we made a state of mind. They said to us, you said this film is very dark. We thought, oh my god, here we go. They said, no, dark. It's always. And so that was one thing. And then they said, but this film is not very good. It is too much like real life, very boring. And we thought, got it. You know,
Excellent.
it's the best criticism you can have.
Yeah. It's interesting that you should say that, unfortunately, I guess tourism is becoming more and more open in a lot of ways over the past 30 years since you've been working there, I presume you can say, but it's a shame that the opposite is happening with the documentaries almost and the filming.
Yeah, I mean, you can't shoot. I mean, so I mean, tourism hasn't actually opened up. I mean, it's pretty much the same country I visited. You know, if I was allowed in now, as it was in 1993.
Right.
There's more. You know, we've pushed. My colleague Simon Cockrell has pushed massively to open up areas, as you know, as all our staff have. But he in particular opened up probably the East Coast and Sinaju, and you know, we worked pushing the marathon and things. So yeah, there's more to do. You're still pretty restricted. What's different is that you can now go in with a phone and make a film, whereas in the old days you need a, you know, even pre-video camera, pre-digital, pre-2002, you really couldn't make. It was very difficult to make films on these sort of small cameras. Our first film was with Andy Kershaw. I must get that up actually at some time. It was a travel show, I think in '96. I'll put it up on our Vimeo site.
Yeah, okay.
And it was us going, I'm in Kershaw, here I am, I'm in North Korea. And we filmed it on a very small sort of little, in an HD, sort of on tape. So it's not
Oh,
great quality, but it's a wonderful film. It's very
yeah.
good.
I've never
But
seen that, so you'll
yeah,
have to
no,
get
no,
that.
it's that what, sorry?
I've never seen that, so you'll have to get that up. So I'd be
Oh
interested
yeah, no, no,
in
I'll
that.
put it up. I'll put it up immediately on Vimeo. I'll get
Excellent.
it up before the program goes out.
Well, this comes out. Super. Back onto Aim High in Creation, because I don't know how much time you have and I want to talk about that still. So, you mentioned the top people in North Korea were there. Like top people in terms of like directors and stuff like that. Who are we talking about here, and how do you get them to be in the film? Like,
Yeah,
what's your
basically,
influence?
it is the top directors. So that was me. Just I mean, they knew us from. I mean, basically, if you watch the film, I don't want to give too much away, but there's one man in particular who's sadly dead now. One of a lovely white-haired man, Mr. Bang, and yeah, I mean, they follow, they meet actresses, they meet the whole lot to get the, you know, cinematographers to try and understand the language of film in North Korea. And most of these people know us because we'd just finished filming Comrade Kim Goes Flying, which won the sort of, I don't know, it's like getting a Blue Peter badge
Really?
as a rock band. Not the sort of thing you want. We won the best director at the Pyongyang Film Festival.
Oh, there you
Um,
go.
so yeah, so great, woohoo! But
Oh, Blue
they
Peter
knew
Bad.
us. Everybody, but yeah, no, no. And I think basically, you know, we were well known, so they came and they brought out. By that time, Ryon Mihua, she'd made pretty good documentaries with us. They'd been sort of regarded as, you know, well shot, if not, you know, only they were worried about the last two films, but The Game of Their Lives was such a powerful film in North Korea. She did well out of that,
Mm.
and and the Comrade Kim Goes Flying film. So they brought out all their big guns, really. That's a question of me going and speaking to people and just pushing them, saying, look, we'd like you to be part of this film, and I promise you that, you know, we won't abuse you. So I'd meet them. We did a recce before Anna came in and met the people with Riom and explained it to them a little bit, the story, as much as I knew the story anyhow. So they had an idea. And then that was it. Anna went in with a very small crew, a female crew. And yeah, they liked her. You know, they enjoyed it.
What did the North Koreans think about the concept? Think about the story? Were they more interested in the fact that they were going to be teaching their propaganda, or were they more interested in her cause, or what were they?
No, and the cause a little. I mean, I took the so when the filming was completed, I took the short film back to show them. So at the very end of the film, it's the, not to give it too much away, but there's
Yeah.
the, I show the directors and actors the film she made, and you know, the film she made is well, you'll see it, you'll
It's too
judge for
intimate.
yourself. But it's quite sort of shocking in a way for them. But you know, they sort of went, okay, that's all right. There you go. You know,
What
it's
was
not
their
good. I
real
think they were sort of
reaction? Because we only see a little bit of their reaction. What was their real reaction?
yeah. Their reaction was, it was, hmm. there you go.
Okay.
That's a foreigner trying. It's a short film. It's unusual. It looks a little bit ham acting and ham done, and I think that was Anna's intention. So they understand. They're quite right. It's not the story. The whole idea of Anna was to get into North Korea to shoot that. And this seemed a good vehicle to put it through. So and the way it was shot, it works. It's I've been to a few screenings of it, and the Western audiences love it. It's a light, fun film, and it's picked a subject. Oh, sorry, I've lost you. It's yeah, it's a light, fun film, and yeah, I think the North Koreans, they've got the same attitude as you to this short film as you would have.
Yes.
You'll see it.
Okay, yeah, yeah, fair enough. Yeah, everyone has to watch this and see the ending, see the short film, and yeah, that's a very good way to put it. I think everyone will probably think the same. In a minute, I'm going to ask you what went wrong, like if there was anything that went wrong. But first of all, I want to know what went surprisingly right, or was there anything that, the North Koreans gave you access to something that you didn't even originally ask for, or was there anything that was surprisingly easy, or any anecdotes, any positive anecdotes?
Yes, I didn't join the shoot. I mean, particularly in this one, I didn't want to. It was a female crew, it was a small crew, and that's their job. But you can just see there's some just gorgeous instance where Anna, they basically she tries to get into the acting role, and she tries to they're making a shoot on the Pueblo, a film on the Pueblo, which incidentally never was. Uh, got I mean, it was made and edited, went through post production, but was never sort of put out because it needs the stamp of the leader to go out, and if he doesn't think it's of good enough quality, it don't go out.
Oh,
Both the
wow.
start of a film and both the end of a film. So
Is that true?
anything to do with film needs the very 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 top.
So anything to do with the Pueblo, sorry, or anything?
No, anything to do with a feature film needs
Oh,
permission from the very very top.
but doesn't get shown.
Before being made, the script before being made, and then after completion, after post production, so when it's ready to go to cinemas. So the Pueblo never made the grade, and that was it. So there's a lot of films that get shelved. So you
Oh,
can imagine it's a lot of cost. That's a lot of film.
so it was this part of the film that wasn't given the stamp and therefore wasn't allowed to be put
No,
in.
it was the whole film. The whole she was sorry. So she was knocked out. So her little bit of acting role was just knocked out of the final edit anyhow. So I've actually seen sort of the film before, and no, she wasn't in the film. They said she's too much of a wooden actress.
Oh, really? Oh, that's
Um,
hilarious. Oh, so this was a North
yeah,
Korean film being made. Right. I know what you mean. Okay, so it was a North Korean film being made and she was as an actress in it.
yeah, a bit part along with one of Dresnok's sons, the eldest
This
son,
is
Joe
actually in
Dresnok's
the
son.
documentary. Yeah. Okay, but then it didn't
Yeah,
get made. I see
but
what you're saying.
that didn't get the grade, and nor did the final film make the
Oh,
grade. So,
okay.
so there's quite interesting little story, little insider story there.
Yeah.
Um, but no, I mean, so they no, so they did an amazing job. They got on really well. Everybody liked them and enjoyed them, and Anna had this a great relationship with the directors, and it was. So I think the shoot was no problem. The sort of shoot afterwards in the film in Australia was a little bit. Had too many images of Kim Jong Il for anyone's liking, and that would have caused problems.
Right.
Sadly, that was something I couldn't. I would have advised against, but we missed out on. But there you go. That's sometimes people have their own agenda and their own things. But I didn't. It was no, it was all good. I mean, the bad side was actually as having spent all this time and energy just to suddenly find you got no sound man going in. As I said
Right.
on the day of the shoot, not very good to be at Beijing airport going, oh my gosh.
But that
Yeah,
was a problem
so
that
very
actually
tricky.
happened even before you went into North Korea, which is if
Yeah,
that was
yeah,
the
yeah.
worst
Before
thing that
they went in, I
happened.
was I was sending them off. I mean, that was we were madly looking around, but of course, you can't just get someone else in because you've got to apply for a North Korean visa,
Right.
etc. So in the end, it was, yeah, just go and we'll sort you out with someone there. And what was interesting, we used one of the sound men that we'd used for shooting Comrade Kim Goes Flying. Because that had been a sync sound film. So they actually used one of our crew who'd actually worked, I think, for Shin Shanok I'd have to check that. But that was the other film, the only other films. This supposedly abducted South Korean director. So there's all sort of backstories, but I'd be here for hours if I started telling all of those ones.
Oh, that's what we want to hear, though.
But it's a lovely link, yeah. So I
Yeah.
mean that's so the crew. Just out of interest, the crew that we used to shoot Comrade Kim Goes Flying, we took our sound man in to teach the North Koreans about sync sound. And we said to them, have you ever done sync sound? And they said, yeah, we've done it once. And then again, this was for this South Korean supposed de facto artist who was supposedly abducted. That's another whole story there. But it was fascinating. He's the guy who made Pulgasari and
Yes, which
Love,
is
Love My Love.
a great
Various other
Korean
films.
film, Bulgasari. It's one of those,
Yeah.
if you want to
Not shown
in life.
but certainly shown. Yeah. Yeah. It wasn't really. I don't know if it was actually shown in North Korea. I don't believe it was, but I think the film was. It may perhaps got a small screening, but it's not known inside North Korea. Whereas, and the other works have subsequently been pulled.
I did not know that. Well, if any of our listeners haven't yet seen Pulgasari or even heard of it, then just type it into Google. You can find it on YouTube actually with English subtitles. It is, sit down and set yourself up with a beer or something because you'll probably need it as you try and sit through the most bizarre film of your life.
Scared to death. It's one of the most scary films I've ever seen.
Yes, it's truly. Did anything else go wrong? Did anyone get into trouble? Did everything else go smoothly the way?
No. I mean, they didn't. I don't think the film sort of caused consternation because of the portrayal of the leader in the sort of the subsequent for the film within the film.
Right.
But no, I mean it was all went to town. It was fine. We close, I would say. You've got to be very careful with these things, and it was a close one thing.
Yeah, it's incredible that the biggest problem, I still can't get over the fact that the biggest problem you encountered was before you even got into North Korea. This film was all about learning the techniques of North Korean propaganda and stuff like that. As someone, so I presume you were there for the whole time, kind of facilitating.
Not for the shoot, no, but only for so my job was to basically get them into North Korea and then let them on their own. So no, I was getting them in, doing the recce, meeting the actors and directors, and then they went in on their own. So I waved off, goodbye to them at the airport, and left in the hands of Ryon. It was a film that was very much, it was going to be led by, the director. She had her own views, and that is better to leave it. Otherwise, the crew becomes too big. So it was fine.
Absolutely fair enough. Well, now that you've seen the film, at least, have you, as a filmmaker, as a producer, what did you learn about filmmaking from this kind of North Korean propaganda? And did you take any valuable lessons from it?
No, sadly, I was having it drummed into me over the last 30 years. So I read the book. No, I mean, no. I mean, it's always fun. It's the greatest thing is like anything is you see the humanity come out. What you I think to me it's again that first scene of where she's sat there. She comes in, she introduces herself, and she's sat around with this scene of North Koreans that you see on every single television bite of them sat down, stony faced, and like they're not giving an inch. And then suddenly that click as it changes, and then the whole thing starts rolling. Because if you can sit down and eat and drink and get to know Koreans, and they feel that they're on safe ground, then they're very happy to talk. They're professionals, they're filmmakers. They may make propaganda films, but they want to make the best propaganda film they ever can. I mean, the fun with the feature film is, we were away from propaganda, so we were sort of slightly more flexible with what we can do. But it's their actors and their writers who add the magic to it. It wasn't us. So the reason why Anna's documentary is so good is because the Koreans are such wonderful, warm, interesting characters.
Yeah,
it's not because she's leading it all the way through. They're making the jokes.
Yeah.
Oh, it's wonderful. I mean, you just look at it and you say, I mean, they're tough buggers. I mean, you if you're an actor working with some of those directors, you'd be absolutely scared stiff.
Oh my God.
But that's like anywhere,
Yeah.
they are, as an actor, as a director. The one saying I did say is, the actors only smile once, which is once at the start of the end of approval of the script and once at the end. They're right miserable. And they're only males who are directors. We managed to have a female editor for our film Comrade Kim Goes Flying.
North Korean female editor.
Yeah, her name's Edit, because basically a friend introduced. She came to do the post production in Beijing, and a chap who spoke English said, "Hello, my name's Martin," and she went, "I am Edit," and she said, "Oh, Edith, hello, nice to see you." So she knows she's unmarried or whatever, but goes around by the moniker of Edith. But yeah, for directors, it's just a male role. So I hope that one thing would be nice to change one day, but we'll see.
Yeah. And I think you brought up an important point that, which I think that comes through in your art as well. I just wanted to ask you about that, is that, they are North Koreans, but they're also professionals. Like, they are filmmakers, they're directors, they're actors and stuff like that. And so even though they are producing propaganda, like you said, they are professionals. They want to do the best in their job. And it's the same for artists. It's the same for, whatever kind of creation that is seen as propaganda. So I'm wondering, from your perspective, can North Korean films and can North Korean art only be seen as propaganda, or is there art behind the production?
Well, it's a big question that many people ask. I mean, first of all, to sort of, they are produced the best they can because they want to. It's not because they're frightened they might lose their job. I mean, that must come into it somewhere. But as an artist, as somebody who's trained that, there is, I'm sure, innately they want to produce good stuff. It's not like there's a fear of suddenly being pulled out of your job and sent off elsewhere. So and you see that people want to be at the best studio, which is studio that I can't mention at the moment because it's on sanctions, but they want to be at the best studios. Because it's to do with their position in society, and the other one is they're probably looked after a damn sight better than if they were in an art studio, in Wonsan or something. So there's benefits if you do well. You get the accolades that follow that. As I mentioned with Pak Dewick, as a football player, he did well and he got a house and he got a car from it. So yeah. But he wanted to do well because he's a football player, and that's just innately in there. Is it art? Is a difficult one. I mean, I would say, speaking to Chinese artists here who are painting in the sort of 80s, 70s, and 80s, they were worker artists. They're producing work for the state. It's all socialist realism, but they will continue. So yeah, they're worker artists. They produce works that that are basically the commissioner of all that. The person who commissions their work is the state. It's the Workers' Party of Korea. They're going to produce pieces that exemplify the revolution, and that's what you're going to get. The fun of us working with them is that we can push that remit. And the works, for example, we did for the Venice Architectural Biennale in 2014, and with architects there, we're giving them a sort of a brief that is wider than anything they've ever had. So that's fun, seeing them work with that. One of my favourites was working with them with the Future is Bright, a series of futuristic. Yeah, and because basically the artists we've both grown up in the sort of 60s, and we both sort of, he's a bit older than me, but we both sort of believed in this, this wonderful bright future of heading off in space as 9-year-olds and, what have you. And his stories were slightly more socialist led, that they went off as groups, all supporting each other. And of course, the Americans were the baddies. And mine one was just more of an individualistic, I'm in a rocket heading to Mars. So that was all going underwater. So that was fun, just for them to actually sort of to widen their brief, if you like. But yeah, it is art. I mean, films like Flower Girl are incredibly impressive, films. I mean, they're very high. They've got a high amount of propaganda in them, obviously. But show me any film, whether it be estates, whatever, that doesn't have most of these sort of big sort of war films, etc., or futuristic films set. God bless America, we're going to fight on, and the same with the British films, what have you. So there's we're all loaded. Everything's loaded.
Gosh, yeah, I don't know which one was it. What's the Tom Cruise airplane one? The one that came
Yeah,
out.
yeah, you know, yeah.
Yeah, I watched that and I'm like,
Not Airplane One.
I feel
Was it not
propaganda, you know?
Airplane was the sort of the spoof one, but yeah, what's it called? Yeah, no. There's yeah. You just have to understand that there's yeah. People when you make a film, you need goodies, baddies, and you fill in bits in between. In that sort of venture film, that's how North Korea make films. They just the enemy in that case is very clearly coming from the West. But is it art? I don't know. I mean, yeah, I think there are some bloody, you when you sort of get into North Korean films, you think, woohoo, this is going to be so exciting. And then after 5 minutes, you're fast asleep after the first one because
Yeah,
it's such a revolutionary tale that, it'll knock you out. But, if you watch something like Hong Kil Dong or
that's a great film.
Pyongyang Nalparam, I mean, they're fantastic sort of kick-ass taekwondo sort of driven films. Order 027, amazing film. I think a couple of people died in the making of that, but the stunts pretty remarkable.
That's intense. I've never seen that one. Okay, I'll have to watch out for it. Two questions before you go. The first one is going to be a little bit longer. The first one is back to Aim High in Creation. What makes it so special? What makes it stand out from the other documentaries that you've like helped to produce and stuff like that? What would be one thing that you would say about Aim High in Creation?
Game High Creation is a very personal story, and it's Anna's sort of story that she wanted to get out. It was something she wanted to get out of her system, and it's just it's the humor in it because she's there up front, whereas in the documentaries we make, we're standing behind the scenes and we're letting the players speak or the Americans speak. We're out of camera. She's in shot. So it's her story, and it's a nice one. It's that's what's I think the fun is she carries it through, and it's her interaction with North Koreans. That's I think is the sort of the passage that gets you through it all.
Yeah.
So it's fun, it's kitsch, and it's a good ride. And yeah. I'm not going to tell you what you learn from it, but I think it's really well worth a watch. It's a fun watch.
Definitely, and I think that's one of my favorite things about it is, like you said, it's kind of a way to candidly see the North Koreans because it is a film about filming, and so you see not only Anna, the director, but you see the North Koreans just being like they're not just actors. You see the actors as well, but then you see the directors and stuff, and you see how everything works kind of behind scenes, and it's really human and it's really pure, and that's what I love about it because
No, totally.
that's what I love about doing the job, like tour guiding, is just being with the North Koreans and seeing like that they are just humans like the rest of us, but the jokes that you make with them and the annoying conversations you have with them, and then how difficult they are sometimes, and then how funny they are sometimes, just like every other human in the world. So
Totally, and most, I mean, particularly with you, is where the guys do get on with you, where they sort of gripe, they start using you to gripe against some of the tourists, going, "God, what do you think about that person, Zoe?" Because to them, you're someone they can trust and know doesn't sort of gossip out to the group. So, but they can use you so they're like, "What's going on with the group? I don't understand this. Why are they finding this funny? Or why is this person so awkward?" And then you sort of have to act almost like they're because of course they've never traveled. You're having to introduce them to different cultures. Why are some people so we must go to the next thing now, or why are we being it's just go on.
That's true. They love to gossip. I have to say, they love to gossip about each other. And usually in the evening when we're on tour, like everyone else is just chilling out in the hotel, doing whatever they want, doing a bit of karaoke and stuff. And we're half working, planning the next day, but half just gossiping about the day. Yeah. So for anyone that's been on tour with me, I'm sorry, you were probably included in that gossip as well. But it's usually no malintentions. It's usually good fun. My last question for you, Nick, is those photos in the background. You've got some beautiful, for everyone that's watching us on YouTube and not listening on podcast form. Do you want to talk a little bit about those beautiful? I can see two of them: Joyong-hee, Silence, and the map of Pyongyang.
Gareth here. That's not a setup. The Silence is a setup. That was we've only got prints. We've got one original left. We've just sold. But these are prints. I think they were going for 120 euros because the Chiclée prints, they're art prints, the limited edition. That's the silence. We've sort of borrowed that a little bit, the idea from the Pyongyang maternity ward, and it's that was to sort of celebrate, or if you like, to sort of hope that we're sort of getting over the virus. So that was printed a year ago, and was it 2 years ago? 2 years ago now. So it's a sort of like, let's hold on. I think we're over this. And that's a very important piece. We did a piece before that called "Now Wash Your Hands," which is just as the virus started.
If you move
But
your
this
head,
piece
that's
was
there, no? We see that in the background a little bit. Yep, there it is.
Oh yeah, you're right. There, there's a little mini of it.
So for people who are listening on audio media only, the pictures that we're talking about, one of them is called Silence, which is a North Korean a nurse, and she's putting her finger to her mouth in a silence pose. And then Nick is currently getting us the Wash Your Hands, which is the 2020 COVID kind of North Korea thing. It's like done like a propaganda poster. It says at the bottom, please remember to please wash your hands. And it's a woman.
We got this just out as the country was closed, and North Koreans then were basically locked out of the country. So this is it was an incredible mission, that one. And then the other one, the beautiful thing here that was not put up as a sort of a dodgy sales, come and buy one of these pieces of art. This piece is by Gareth Fuller, an amazing artist. And in fact, these are incredibly affordable. I do believe that man is going to go places. He went to Pyongyang, spent weeks in Pyongyang, walking around literally everywhere, more places than almost anyone has been, and then sketching it and interpreting it as he wanted to. I could show you a little. I mean, the details are quite astounding. I don't know what I'm showing you there, but that's the Kim Il Sung Square and then the Juche Tower. But he's a wonderful man, and he has a few prints. We basically share a bit of profit. We got a bit of commission from him for each piece, but they're amazing, beautiful pieces. And we're continually we've got some new art that we've just produced, and still working with artists basically outside the sort of totally sort of semi-official areas, I would say. So that we're having fun getting, and they're with these artists who I've known for a long time, and so we can look after them, if you like.
Yeah, amazing. So if anyone wants to look up some more North Korean art and stuff like that, then I will put in the show notes. It's you go on to choreostudio.com, and I'll put in the show notes all the information about the pieces that we've talked about today, as well as all of the documentaries that we've talked about today. And just to mention the one that Nick was talking about just then, the map. It is an absolutely incredibly detailed map. I know for those who are listening, you can't see so well, but it's this incredible map that you could just look at for hours and hours and hours, and you could still see new things of Pyongyang. It's just an incredible piece, and those other two posters as well are very cool. I particularly like the Wash Your Hands ones. I keep meaning to ask you for a discount on one of those.
It's kept here for you, Zoe.
Let's see where that goes. Anyway, Nick, thank you so much for your insight, as always. I always think that we could talk for hours with all of the little alleyways that we go down and stuff like that, and all the anecdotes that you have of 30 years working in the country. But for that, I'll have to get you on again. I think I've taken up enough of your time. So thank you very much for coming onto the podcast.
No, thank you, everybody. Thanks, Zoe. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Sorry that I tend to go on a tandem, but that's how you make documentaries. You go online and they take you all over places.
Indeed, and that's definitely what we love here. So thank you once again, and I hope to speak to you again soon.
Super. Thank you.
Just before we end today's episode, I wanted to tie in some loose ends. Obviously, we spoke about a lot with Nick, and with most geniuses, things kind of, fly around everywhere, and I wanted to go over some things that we talked about, mainly including all of the documentaries that we spoke about and some of the art as well, and how you guys can go about watching it, and also why you should. So firstly, I wanted to mention Comrade Kim Goes Flying. So this is a 2012 documentary, and it's a really heartwarming North Korean romantic comedy. The film follows the story of Kim Yong-mi, who is a young coal miner with a passion for trapeze flying. Despite facing numerous obstacles and societal expectations, Kim Young-mi dreams of becoming an acrobat in the national circus. It's a story of absolute girl power. With determination and perseverance, she embarks on a journey to achieve her dreams, challenging traditional gender roles and inspiring those around her. The film explores themes of ambition, resilience, and the pursuit of dreams in the face of adversity. I would definitely recommend it, especially if it is your first ever North Korean film that you will be seeing. It's a very, very cool film. It's very easily accessible. I think I've spoken about it on the podcast before. It is half kind of North Korean produced, half Western produced, so it's very, very accessible if it's definitely one of your first films. And it is a film. It's not a documentary. It's like a feature-length film in North Korea. So we spoke about that on the podcast today with Nick. And all of the ones that I'm about to reel through, they're all ones that Nick or Koryo Tours and Koryo Studio have had some involvement in some way, shape, or form. The next one that we mentioned on the podcast with Nick was The Game of Their Lives. Now, this is the football one that we spoke about, the one that tells the story of the footballers who you know, got against all odds, got into the quarterfinals in Italy. They won Italy, and this was all in the UK, and it's, you know, there was big rumours going around that they were put into camps after not winning and stuff like that. So it tells this incredible story. It's a sports drama based on this true story. It's actually a documentary about these people, these footballers. They went in and they found these footballers who played in this match. It's an absolutely incredible, heartwarming tale, and just really interesting access that they get, and it's just incredible. I really recommend watching The Game of Their Lives. Next up is A State of Mind. This is a 2004 documentary. It's a documentary film that provides an intimate look into the lives of two North Korean gymnasts preparing for the mass games. This is a grandiose display of synchronized gymnastics and ideological pageantry, and has been known as, you know, won the Guinness Book of World Records for the largest human show on Earth. This is what Nick was talking about when he was saying that, you know, following the lives so closely of the girls until, you know, they had to pull the sheets over their head because they were so sick of camera crews following them around. They really got unprecedented access into the lives of real North Korean people. It offers a really rare glimpse into this closed-off society by following these two young gymnasts. This is Park Hyun-sun and Kim Song-yun, and their rigorous training routines. It explores the immense pressure they face to perform flawlessly and their unwavering devotion to the country's ideology. Through their personal stories, you really get to know a good insight on the realities of life in North Korea. And finally, in terms of the documentaries that we talked about, Nick also mentioned the documentary Crossing the Line, which is a 2006 documentary, delves into the remarkable story of James Joseph Dresnok. He is an American soldier who defected to North Korea in 1962. He's not the only one that did so, but he was at that time the only remaining survivor. He has since passed away. The film examines Dresnok's motivations for defecting and chronicles his life in North Korea over several decades, which, as Nick mentioned, he does also have children there who are still alive today, and interestingly enough, they often play like the Western people, the Western baddies in North Korean movies, stuff like that. It explores the complexities of his decision through interviews and archival footage. Crossing the Line provides a unique perspective on an extraordinary individual and offers an insight into, once again, a secretive and enigmatic nation of North Korea. So, would definitely recommend all of those, and luckily enough for you guys, all of those are now available on Vimeo to rent or to buy and download. Just as Aim High in Creation is now too. That's basically why I wanted to do this this whole podcast episode, because before Aim High in Creation was not available online, but now it is. It's available online. It's pretty cheap to purchase. I think it's $5 to rent and then $10 to download. So if you download, obviously you've got it for life. Watch it with a friend, stuff like that. So it's not too expensive, and it's a really, really cool documentary. Out of all of these, I could not pick my own. They all have their own interesting quirks about them. I think Nick's point about you know, how real aim high in creation is really interesting. And of course, you guys are probably really curious as to how the actual film ended up in the end. I know throughout the whole time that I was watching, that was the only thing that I wanted to see. I was like, I want to see what she's made of this. You know, what has she learned? What is she going to make? And it is only, you know, the last 10 minutes or so of the film, but very, very interesting. Moreover, there is actually a competition coming out today. If you are listening on Thursday what is Thursday? I think Thursday the 14th of July. If you are listening this week, then you will be able to see and be the first to take part in the competition that Choreo Studio are running for this release of Aim High in Creation on Vimeo. It's basically, you enter a little quiz. It's a really nice, easy quiz online, and you'll probably, by listening to this podcast, you'll be able to probably answer the question a lot easier. You basically just have to identify some films. And then you get in for a chance of winning. I think it's going to be 2 rents and 1 purchase. You can win. So all of these links are going to be in the show notes, all the links to the films that we talked about, all of the links to the artwork that we also talked about, and the link to Aim High in Creation on Vimeo, as well as the competition where you can win yourself 2 rents and 1 purchase. I think that's what it's going to be. So make sure to check out that as well. And of course, during the meantime, you can also check out all of the other films that I mentioned. Honestly, really, really worth the watch. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed listening to today's podcast episode, which was a little bit here, there, and everywhere. But I hope that you can now put on Aim High in Creation, you know, with a lot more context of the backstage and stuff and what we talked about today. Thank you so much for joining once again. Do remember to tune in again next week, where we will be exploring North Korean landscapes. Finally, I know I said I would do that a few weeks ago, but I've had guests on and it's all been pretty exciting. So make sure to tune in for that, and I will look forward to hearing from you next week. And do give me your your podcast guest recommendations, your topics you'd like me to cover, stuff like that. Anything. If you want to just say hi, I do actually have a lot of messages of people just emailing in and saying that they love the podcast. If you want to do that, it's zoediscovers@gmail.com. Thank you very much. You can also find me on all the social medias using that handle too, @zoediscovers or @zoediscoversnk. Thank you very much, and tune in next time. Bye bye.